Here is my interview with the incredible Mrs. Cannon. She's a teacher at Stafford Middle School, and she just won Teacher of the Year. Very well deserved. And not only is she probably the biggest Hamilton fan, but she also knows so much about history, as she is probably the best history teacher I've ever seen. I was incredibly lucky to work with her during my time at Stafford Middle, so I know that she has so much information to share with us. Well, thanks for joining me today. For those of you that don't know, this is Kim Cannon. She is here to talk to us a little bit about Hamilton. Kim, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've been teaching for 1,000 years and really old now. And I'm actually currently at Stafford Middle School. I teach U.S. history, and I absolutely love it. And I love that you guys wanted to do Hamilton because I like that subject as well.
Yeah, we're excited. So again, thanks for joining us. We really want to kind of jump in and first ask, who was Hamilton?
That's such a loaded question there, Miss Ingram. Who is Hamilton? Well, he was a man. He was an immigrant. He was like everybody else. I think the reason I like him the most is because he was so human. He made so many mistakes, and still rose to almost be the second most powerful man in the world. I think that he was brilliant, smart. Things came easy to him, even though he was left with no mom, no dad at like 13, 14 years old, had to kind of make it on his own. But he did it anyway. And people recognized his brilliance and sent him to New York City to be educated. But right when he got to New York City, we were in the middle of starting the American Revolution. He got caught up in that. And little did he know, he was such a good writer that everybody wanted him to write for them. And he kept telling everybody, no, I want to fight. If I'm going to rise up in this world and be somebody, I've got to be a general or, until George Washington asked him to be his writer, his secretary, and then he couldn't say no. And he was kind of his second-hand man throughout the American Revolution. And Washington's going to make him Treasury Secretary when he becomes president of the United States. And he's going to basically start everything from scratch. We didn't have a Coast Guard. He made the Coast Guard. We didn't have Wall Street. Got him made Wall Street. We didn't have money systems. He made that. He's going to do all of that, yet he's going to be killed because of his politics. And it seems interesting because there's such a parallel between history and today. People think, oh my God, the politics today are so bad and so divisive. And history? No, it ebbs and flows that way. During the Civil War, Preston Brooks beat Charles Sumner on the Senate floor with a cane, gave him brain damage over slavery. I don't see anybody beating each other on the congressional floor yet. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying it hasn't happened yet. And Hamilton's going to be shot by the Vice President of the United States. I mean, how does that happen? It happens because of politics. And right. It makes it so interesting. And that's who Hamilton was.
A lot of the stuff you mentioned happened in the past. However, you also mentioned modern day politics. So how can we really look at Hamilton and use either what he thought or what he did in today's society?
I would look back at all the mistakes they made, because the people who started this country started it on an idea that they didn't know whether it would work or not. It was an experiment. Hey, let's jump off a cliff, try this. And if it works, that would be amazing. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And it's still working, albeit, we have a two-party system, right? We have Republicans and Democrats today. And back then, we just had a one kind of party system when it started out. It was just going to be George Washington, right? But George Washington did something really interesting, which I think we should do more of today. He asked Jefferson to be in his cabinet, Thomas Jefferson, and he asked Hamilton to be in his cabinet. And these two guys were black and white opposites. I mean, they totally believed completely different things. But Washington liked that because it gave him different perspectives. And we fill our cabinets today. Trump filled his cabinets with a bunch of Republicans, and Biden's probably going to fill his cabinet with a bunch of Democrats. And where's the perspective in that? You know what I mean? And I love George Washington because he invited the two of them in there. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. He generally seemed to go with Hamilton, but only because Hamilton was more of where George Washington leaned. So, but he was still getting the other side of the story. He's still getting the other perspective. And I find that fascinating. And Jefferson and Hamilton are the reason we have two parties today. I mean, there was no Republican and Democrat back then, but we have two opposing systems today because of those two and how they fundamentally saw government. I find that fascinating. Is this Hamilton as in Alexander Hamilton, like the historical figure? And I had to go look that up. And when I found out it was, I read the book first. And while I was reading the book, I was actually listening to the musical. And I found it interesting because I saw that the guy, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who created the play, decided not to do your typical play. He decided to write it with rap songs because he saw history as, you know, this political discourse and this talking back and forth, and he wanted to use rap music to do that, to tell the story, which was unique. That's definitely different than what you see in Broadway today. But he was also telling a really true story. And because I read the book first, I was able to analyze it historically as he was going through with the play. And I thought it was really interesting that tiny little bits of the play were wrong, but it was where Burr was somewhere he wasn't, or it should have been Monroe instead of Madison. But it was still the same story, and he just had to do it with a limited number of characters. But he got it straight. I mean, he got it right. And you often see a lot of historical movies, and I find, I just watched The Tudors, and I thought The Tudors was so good, and so much of it was inaccurate. You know what I mean? And that's so disappointing to me because I don't want to watch something and think this really happened when it never happened. I would rather somebody stay true to the story. And Hamilton's story is easy to stay true to because it seems unbelievable that the vice president kills Alexander Hamilton, but it truly happens. And so I guess I didn't really have to deter too much to make it good for a play.
Right. So now that we know there are some differences when we watch the play, is there anything specifically that we should watch out for or be aware of before we start it?
A couple things I learned when I was watching the documentary on how they made it, and I thought was interesting, was the fact that Thomas Jefferson, if you guys don't remember your history on Thomas Jefferson, he was in France for the duration of the American Revolution. So while George Washington and Alexander Hamilton were fighting, he was in France, and he was being a diplomat. He was trying to get France involved in the war. But he also signed the Declaration of Independence, correct? And the first people to die if we lose this war, or going to be charged with treason and probably hung, probably going to be Jefferson. So he was also safe in France. So a lot of his critics think, did he go to France to be a diplomat? Did he go to France to save his neck? I don't know. Both, they did show up at Monticello with the army, and he did hide from them. So I don't know, two ways to look at that. But when Jefferson comes home, he's singing this song in the movie, in the play called "What Did I Miss?" Basically, he missed everything because he was gone. And but he's singing it in jazz music, and so they like to use him in jazz. Like the whole country has moved on to rap music, and he comes back from France, and he's still in the jazz era. You know what I mean? Like he missed everything. So they not only do it, they not only tell you the story of what he missed, but they do it with music. I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't have caught that had I not been told that. You know what I mean? Even though I did know he sang jazz, it just didn't resonate. It didn't click.
Right. I love it. Thanks. So anything else you want to share with us before we start our journey into Hamilton?
Probably. Do you think they would want to know why Burr killed him, or do you think that this is something they should discover?
Ooh, that's a good question. So basically, the reason Alexander Hamilton is killed by Aaron Burr, I alluded to in the beginning, was politics, right? Mm-hmm.
But it was very simple politics. So Thomas Jefferson, the president, third president of the United States. Everybody likes to think just won as presidency. He did not. He tied his presidency with Aaron Burr. And so we didn't know who was going to be president because they literally straight up tied. And it kind of comes down to Hamilton. And Hamilton, as much as he hated Thomas Jefferson because they were so opposite, he didn't like Burr more because Burr had no, what's a good word for it? He had no ideas himself. Like Jefferson would tell you, I'm straight up, this is what I believe, we should be helping France, where Burr just went back and forth. He swung with the voters. So if the voters wanted to be involved with France, Burr wanted to be involved with France. And so he didn't really have anything. And so even though Hamilton did not like what Jefferson was saying, he thought at least he had principles. And he didn't see Alexander or Aaron Burr as having any principles. And so, he had made a remark about him at a dinner table, and he got back to Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr wrote him a short note basically saying, you need to apologize to me. But remember, Alexander Hamilton is the one that talked everybody into breaking the tie. So Jefferson becomes president of the United States. Aaron Burr, vice president of the United States, because that's how it was back then. And so he loses the presidency to him, then comes back to New York and runs for governor, I believe, and loses because Alexander Hamilton helps the other guy. And so it was almost like this competition. And so Aaron Burr demands this apology. And Alexander Hamilton's like, what do you want me to apologize for? Because basically he writes him back like 25 pages of, these are all the things I've done to you. Which one do you want me to say sorry for? Real smart, Alex. You know what I mean? And this really upset Burr. And so Burr is just like, now I really need an apology. And he's just like, basically, I'm not going to give it to you. And he's like, well, then we'll meet on the dueling ground. And therefore we went. What's interesting about that is a lot of people don't know Hamilton's son had been challenged to a duel over Hamilton years before. Somebody made a remark about his father, and he challenged him to a duel. And when he went to Hamilton's friend, he didn't go to Hamilton, his son. His son went to his friend and asked, what do I do? Well, the friend went to Hamilton and said, what do I tell your son to do? And he's like, nobody goes to the duel to shoot each other. They go to show if they're man enough to show up. So tell him to shoot in the air. This guy will shoot in the air. It'll be over. So Philip Hamilton shows up, shoots in the air. The other guy shoots him dead. And Hamilton's destroyed. I mean, this like messed him up, messed his wife up. I mean, like, so here he is heading towards the dueling ground with this notion in mind. And history will tell you two different stories. It'll tell you, Hamilton brought a second guy with him, and Burr brought a second guy with him. And Hamilton's second will say that when Hamilton shot, he shot up in the air, and Burr killed him. And Burr's second will tell you that Hamilton shot but missed. So then Burr killed him. I think based on what he told Philip to do, he probably shot in the air. Is my gut, is what tells me probably happened. And Burr does show some regret towards the end of his life. He never really talked about it much, but he did write in a journal once about two philosophers. And one philosopher believed in not killing a fly, like letting a fly go. And another philosopher is like, Machiavelli, eye for an eye kind of thing. And he said, I wish I would have read less of him and more of the guy that lets the fly go. And I would have realized, and he said these words, that this world was wide enough for both Hamilton and me. And there's a song in Hamilton that's called The World Was Wide Enough. And because those were his exact words. So he does show regret over what he did in the end.
Right.
But it sucks that, this political back and forth caused this man's death. And then a lot of the presidents after Hamilton were all more on the political side of Jefferson. So they kind of buried Hamilton. You know what I mean? Like he gets lost in history books because nobody wants to give him credit for all the things that he did. So he gets lost for how many years? 200 years? And now
I don't remember learning too much about Hamilton when I was in school.
No, I only learned about his duel. I only learned about the duel. Aaron Burr killed him. Bum, done. So this taught me a whole new story, which makes it even more interesting. But now when you go back, everybody always credits Hamilton. I mean, we know the Federalist Papers were written by mostly Hamilton, but and he's on the $10 bill because he started the U.S. Treasury. But before this play came out, they were going to put Harriet Tubman on a $10 bill and get rid of Hamilton. Like he had become so obscure and nobody talked about him anymore that they were ready to just kind of write him out. So it's very interesting that the second he's about to fade in history forever, he becomes one of the biggest history figures of all time. Fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's cool that it's almost like we can keep history alive by retelling stories. So.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Cannon. We appreciate your time and your insight. So,
So in the play, and you can bring this up or you can let them see this, but in the play, when Hamilton and Jefferson meet with George Washington, and Washington gives them, this is where I need an answer to this, and Jefferson would tell him his side, and Hamilton would tell him his side, and Washington would decide. In the play, they do this as a rap battle to make it more relevant and more new, for today. And I find that interesting. And I think that that would be really cool to do in English, is to create their own rap battle, maybe on the politics of today, but trying to keep it balanced. And that's what I was telling you earlier. Like, you can't trash Trump and you can't trash Biden. So how are you going to make it balanced rap battle here? You know what I mean? Or could you rap battle with somebody and you trash, he trashes? You know what I mean? But with respect.
right.
I think that would be an interesting take on it. You know what I mean? To take history from the past and bring it to the present, and maybe have, instead of a debate, a rap battle.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I have a feeling we have a few students that would take that on.
I think that would be interesting. The biggest obstacle is going to be the obvious topic, but if you make them keep it balanced and not mean, because in the play, you're going to see Hamilton and Jefferson, they're going to be mean. They say mean things to each other. That's politics, right? So how can you say it mean but keep it clean? I don't know. That would be your challenge. But I think 10th, 11th graders could do it. I do.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yay!
I'm
excited for you.
Well, as always, we appreciate you and all that you do. So with that, thank you. And
I appreciate you too. It's good seeing you again, Miss Ingram.
Well,
and good luck to all of you students. And I hope you at least get a chance to watch the play. It is fabulous.
We plan to do a streaming party after school one day. So
Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Miss Ingram. I'll see you later.
You want to fight for your land back? I need my right-hand man back. Yeah, get your right-hand man back. You know you gotta get your right-hand man back. I mean, you gotta put some thought into the letter, but the sooner the better to get your right-hand man back. Alexander Hamilton